There is a subject most people would rather avoid talking about. It is uncomfortable. It is embarrassing. And because of that, many people suffer silently when something feels wrong with their bowel movements. But sometimes, when stool feels like it is literally stuck in the rectum, your body is giving you a message that deserves your attention. This is not simply about going to the bathroom. It is about understanding what your digestive system is trying to tell you and knowing when a problem can be managed calmly and when it requires medical attention. When stool becomes hard, dry, and difficult to pass, constipation may be the reason. In more severe cases, stool can become tightly packed in the rectum, a condition known as fecal impaction. This can make the sensation of being blocked much more intense. And here is the important point. Straining harder is not always the answer. Your body is not a machine that responds better simply because you push harder. The digestive system is a sophisticated biological network. Your colon absorbs water from waste, muscles move that waste forward, and your rectum signals your brain when it is time to empty. When that process becomes disrupted, stool can become progressively harder and more difficult to eliminate. So what should you do? First, don't panic. If you are otherwise well, and this is mild, simple measures may sometimes help. Drinking adequate fluids, staying physically active, and maintaining a balanced diet with appropriate amounts of fiber can support regular bowel movements. But there is an important distinction. If stool already feels firmly impacted in the rectum, suddenly consuming large amounts of fiber may not solve the immediate blockage and can sometimes make bloating or discomfort worse. This is why the right response depends on the situation. And this brings us to one of the most important lessons about health. Never confuse discomfort with danger, but never ignore danger because you are embarrassed. If you have severe or worsening abdominal pain, significant abdominal swelling, repeated vomiting, inability to pass stool or gas, substantial rectal bleeding, fever, fainting, or severe weakness, you should seek urgent medical evaluation. These symptoms can indicate something more serious than ordinary constipation. There is another mistake people sometimes make, repeatedly sitting on the toilet and straining for long periods. Your goal should not be to win a battle against your body. Excessive straining can cause problems such as hemorrhoids and anal fissures, and persistent difficulty passing stool deserves proper evaluation rather than endless force. So instead of asking, "How can I push harder?" ask a better question. Why is my body having difficulty passing this stool? The answer can involve dehydration, low physical activity, dietary changes, medications, changes in bowel habits, or other medical conditions. And sometimes the solution requires more than home remedies. A healthcare professional can determine whether the stool is impacted and recommend an appropriate treatment. Depending on the situation, treatment may involve an oral medication, rectal treatment, or removal of impacted stool by a medical professional. That last point is especially important. If you suspect a true fecal impaction, don't attempt aggressive self-removal or use repeated treatments without professional guidance. Your health is more valuable than your embarrassment. Think about that for a moment. We will spend enormous amounts of time protecting our money, our homes, our cars, and our possessions. But your body is the greatest asset you will ever own. And yet many people will delay getting help for a physical problem simply because the subject feels uncomfortable. That is not strength. Real strength is recognizing a problem and dealing with it before it becomes bigger. Your digestive health also deserves prevention. Regular movement can help support normal bowel function. A balanced diet containing appropriate fiber can promote healthy stool consistency. Adequate fluid intake is important for many people, and paying attention to changes in your normal bowel habits can help you identify problems earlier. But remember, more is not always better. Fiber needs to be appropriate for your individual situation, especially if you have significant constipation or a suspected obstruction, and hydration needs vary depending on your health and medical circumstances. The smartest approach is not following one miracle trick. It is understanding your body. There is no magic food, secret position, or instant remedy that should replace medical care when serious symptoms appear. Your body communicates through patterns. Persistent constipation. Repeated difficulty passing stool. New changes in bowel habits. Unexplained bleeding. Unusual abdominal pain. These are signals worth discussing with a healthcare professional. And here is the powerful wealth lesson hidden inside all of this. Health is wealth, but prevention is an even greater form of wealth. You don't have to wait until your body forces you to pay attention. You can start listening now. Notice your bowel habits. Notice changes. Move your body. Eat a balanced diet. Drink fluids appropriately. Review medications with your healthcare professional if constipation begins after starting something new. And most importantly, know the warning signs that mean it is time to seek help. Because the goal isn't simply to have a bowel movement today. The goal is to protect your health for tomorrow, next year, and the decades ahead. So if you ever experience that frightening feeling that stool is stuck in your rectum, don't let embarrassment make the decision for you. Pause. Assess your symptoms. Avoid excessive straining. Take sensible steps when appropriate. And if the symptoms are severe, persistent, or accompanied by warning signs, get medical help. Your body is not an inconvenience. Your health is not an afterthought. And asking for help is not weakness. It is wisdom. Because the greatest wealth you can build is not sitting in a bank account. It is the ability to wake up, move freely, think clearly, enjoy the people you love, and live your life with a body you have taken seriously. Protect your health today, and you may be protecting the most valuable wealth you will ever possess. A bowel movement may seem like one of the most ordinary things the human body does, but when stool becomes trapped in the rectum, the situation can quickly become uncomfortable, painful, and sometimes medically serious. Constipation affects people across every stage of life, but the risk can increase when someone drinks too little fluid, moves less, changes their diet, ignores the urge to use the bathroom, or takes certain medications that slow bowel activity. The important thing is to understand that constipation is not simply about how often you go. Someone can have a bowel movement and still feel that stool remains behind, especially when the stool is hard, dry, or difficult to evacuate. That sensation of blockage deserves attention, because it can indicate that the normal movement of waste through the digestive tract has slowed significantly. When stool remains in the colon, more water can be absorbed from it, making the stool progressively harder. The longer this cycle continues, the more difficult passing the stool may become. Eventually, a large, hardened mass can become lodged in the rectum. This is known as fecal impaction, and it is different from an ordinary episode of mild constipation. One of the biggest mistakes people make is assuming that more force will automatically solve the problem. Sitting on the toilet and repeatedly straining can increase discomfort and may contribute to problems such as hemorrhoids or small tears around the anus. Instead of treating your body like an obstacle that needs to be conquered, treat the symptom as information. Ask yourself when the problem started, whether your bowel movements have recently changed, whether you are passing gas, whether you have abdominal pain, and whether you have experienced vomiting, bleeding, fever, or unusual weakness. These details matter because they can help distinguish uncomplicated constipation from a condition that requires prompt medical attention. If you have severe abdominal pain, significant swelling, repeated vomiting, inability to pass stool or gas, substantial rectal bleeding, fainting, or severe weakness, do not keep trying home remedies while hoping the problem disappears. Seek urgent medical evaluation. A suspected obstruction or severe impaction may require treatment that should be performed or directed by a healthcare professional. Another important point is that suddenly adding a very large amount of fiber is not necessarily the right response when you already feel completely blocked. Fiber can be valuable for preventing constipation and supporting healthy bowel function, but when a person has significant blockage symptoms, the immediate approach may need to be different. This is why individualized medical advice matters. Your digestive system is constantly working behind the scenes, coordinating muscles, nerves, fluids, and microorganisms to move waste through the body. When that system changes, your symptoms are worth listening to. Prevention begins with simple habits: adequate fluid intake when medically appropriate, regular physical activity, a balanced diet, responding to the natural urge to have a bowel movement, and reviewing medications with a healthcare professional when constipation begins after a medication change. Most importantly, don't let embarrassment stop you from getting help. There is nothing shameful about discussing bowel problems with a doctor. These are normal biological functions, and problems with them are common medical concerns. The real danger is not talking about the problem. It is ignoring a serious symptom until it becomes harder to treat. Your body gives you signals for a reason. Learn to recognize them, respond early, and remember that protecting your digestive health is part of protecting your overall health and your most valuable form of wealth. One of the most important things to understand when stool feels stuck in the rectum is that the sensation is not always caused by simply needing to push harder. Your rectum and colon are designed to work through coordinated muscle contractions, nerve signals, and changes in stool consistency. When stool becomes unusually hard or dry, the muscles involved in elimination may struggle to move it comfortably. This can create a frustrating cycle. You feel the urge to go, you sit down, you strain, very little happens, and you leave the bathroom feeling as though the problem is still there. Repeating that cycle can increase irritation and anxiety without addressing the underlying cause. A better approach is to pay attention to the complete picture. Ask whether you have recently been drinking less fluid, eating differently, becoming less physically active, traveling, changing your daily routine, or taking medication that can contribute to constipation. Some people also develop constipation because they regularly ignore the urge to use the bathroom. Over time, repeatedly delaying that natural signal can make bowel movements more difficult for some individuals. The stool may remain in the colon longer, allowing additional water to be absorbed and leaving it harder and more compact. This is why regular habits matter. Your digestive system responds to consistency. Movement, appropriate fluid intake, and a balanced diet can all support normal bowel function. However, there is an important distinction between preventing constipation and treating a possible impaction that is already present. If stool is severely stuck, simply adding more food or fiber may not immediately solve the problem. In some situations, a healthcare professional may recommend a specific medication or rectal treatment, depending on the person's symptoms and medical history. This is particularly important for older adults and people taking multiple medications because constipation can sometimes be related to medications or underlying health problems. Never assume that a product labeled as a laxative is automatically appropriate for every situation. Different types work in different ways, and some may be unsuitable when there is a possible obstruction or another serious condition. Another warning sign is leakage of liquid stool around a hard mass. Some people mistakenly believe this means the constipation is resolving, but liquid stool can sometimes pass around an impaction rather than removing it. That is one reason persistent symptoms should not be dismissed. If you develop severe or worsening abdominal pain, major abdominal swelling, repeated vomiting, inability to pass gas or stool, significant rectal bleeding, fever, fainting, or severe weakness, seek urgent medical care rather than continuing to experiment with home treatments. Your body may be telling you that the problem has moved beyond ordinary constipation. There is also a psychological side to this issue. Embarrassment can make people delay medical care for days or even longer. They may search for increasingly aggressive home remedies because they don't want to discuss the problem with another person. But there is no prize for suffering silently. Healthcare professionals deal with bowel problems every day, and describing your symptoms honestly gives them the information needed to determine what is happening. Think of your digestive system as part of your long-term wealth. You protect financial wealth by noticing warning signs before a small problem becomes a major loss. Your health deserves the same attention. Don't wait for severe pain before you start caring about your bowel habits. Notice changes early. Respect persistent symptoms. Avoid excessive straining. Use medications responsibly. And when the signs suggest something more serious, seek professional care without shame or delay. The goal is not simply to force stool out of your body. The goal is to restore healthy bowel function while protecting the rest of your body from unnecessary harm and complications. There is another important part of the story that many people overlook. What happens before stool becomes stuck? The digestive system rarely changes without a reason. Often, several small factors gradually combine until a person suddenly realizes that going to the bathroom has become difficult. Maybe the person has been sitting more and walking less. Maybe their usual meals have changed. Perhaps they have been drinking fewer fluids because they are busy, traveling, or simply don't feel thirsty. Sometimes a new medication changes bowel function. Sometimes a person repeatedly ignores the urge to go because they are at work, traveling, or uncomfortable using a public bathroom. Each of these situations can influence the normal rhythm of the digestive tract. Stool that remains in the colon for longer periods can lose more water and become harder. Once the stool becomes dry and compact, passing it may require considerably more effort. That effort can create another problem because people often respond to difficult bowel movements by straining harder and staying on the toilet longer. But force is not the same thing as effective treatment. The muscles involved in bowel evacuation need coordination, and excessive straining can increase pressure around the rectum and contribute to hemorrhoids or small tears. The better strategy is to understand what is happening rather than simply fighting the symptom. This is especially important when constipation becomes a repeated pattern. Occasional constipation may happen to almost anyone, but persistent or recurring difficulty deserves attention. A healthcare professional may want to know how long the symptoms have been present, what the stool looks like, how often bowel movements occur, whether there is pain, whether gas is passing normally, and whether medications or medical conditions could be contributing. These details can reveal important clues. Another reason to pay attention is that the feeling of being blocked does not always mean the problem is located only at the rectum. Sometimes constipation involves slower movement throughout the colon. Sometimes the stool is simply too hard to pass comfortably. In other situations, a true fecal impaction can develop. The distinction matters because the appropriate treatment can be very different. If you suspect a serious blockage, repeatedly taking laxatives or attempting aggressive manual removal without medical guidance can create unnecessary risk. Instead, recognize the warning signs that require professional attention. Severe abdominal pain, marked swelling, persistent vomiting, inability to pass stool or gas, significant bleeding, fever, fainting, or severe weakness should never be treated as ordinary constipation. These symptoms can indicate a condition that requires urgent assessment. Even when the situation is not an emergency, persistent symptoms should not become your new normal. Your bowel habits are part of your overall health picture. They can be influenced by diet, activity, medications, hydration, routine, and many other factors. This is why prevention is more powerful than waiting for a crisis. Regular movement supports normal digestive activity. A balanced diet with appropriate fiber can support stool quality. Adequate fluid intake can help maintain normal hydration when there are no medical restrictions. Responding to the body's natural urge instead of constantly postponing it can also support healthier habits. But prevention should never become an excuse to ignore symptoms that are already severe. The most intelligent approach is balanced. Support your body when the problem is mild, but know when professional care is necessary. And never allow embarrassment to become a barrier. Talking about stool, constipation, rectal discomfort, or bowel changes may feel awkward, but these are ordinary medical concerns. Your doctor cannot help with information you are too embarrassed to share. Your body is communicating with you every day. When it whispers, listen. When a symptom persists, investigate. And when it sends an alarm through severe pain, vomiting, bleeding, or inability to pass stool or gas, respond immediately. Protecting your digestive health is not a small responsibility. It is another way of protecting the most valuable wealth you will ever have, your ability to live, move, work, enjoy your relationships, and experience life with greater freedom. There is a subject